Hi there. Well, if you watched some of my other stuff, you know me mostly as a guitar builder, but I plan to make this a new short series of videos where I look more into repair work. I haven't done too much repair on old guitars, but actually I collected some old ones of my own here, and some of those are a little bit more unusual models, so I thought it might be cool to share some of that work. Maybe there's something interesting for you. Let's get right into it. The first thing on the bench here is a Musima from former East Germany. I believe the model number is 1657 on this one. It's like a thin line or semi-acoustic, whatever you want to call it. Let's have a look. Pretty bad condition, but appears to be all original as far as I can tell. So no real modifications, no real part changes. Lots of wear on the finish, lots of checking, but also lots of dirt and grime. Look at that. Giant, kind of oddly shaped headstock. Lots of finish checking as well. But all the original tuners are still in place and even all the buttons are still on there. This is a good sign. It seems to have a truss rod. We'll see. Might be just a cover. 0 fret on there. This is like still the original nut or string guide or whatever you want to call it. You often see this lamination of like 3 different colors of plastic here on German guitars. Binding and dots. Yeah, this doesn't look too bad at first glance. This is actually a bolt-on neck here. We'll get into that in a minute. And you can tell this is a little bit loose. I kind of wiggle it around here. We'll look at that. It's really hard to date these guitars because they don't really have serial numbers. At least mine doesn't, or like most of them I ever had on the bench didn't have serial numbers. The only real option is the pickups to roughly tell the year. And those ones, as far as I can tell, are actually pretty late models. Most of the pickups are called like Simeto pickups based on like the factory or the place where they're made. And this style is, as far as I can tell, like at least middle to late 70s. So yeah, this guitar is not as old as it looks. I guess like late 70s. Then there's obviously a pickguard missing, which I sadly don't have, but I think we have to make one because this opening in the F-hole looks kind of weird, but might be good to get the electronics out, I hope. Then we have 2 original knobs. They both say volume. This one is loose. We'll see. And like a 4-position switch here. There should be some filters in there, like a high pass and a low pass, as well as pickup select. I think we'll have to reverse engineer that a little bit, or clean it up at least. And then for this funky old tailpiece here, look at that. This is actually a vibrato system, if you couldn't tell. So there's your spring down there. The handlebar, or whatever you want to call it, like the whammy bar, will be screwed into here. And then you have this kind of funny looking trapeze tailpiece that just hooks behind here. There's a little slot like that. You can imagine the strings pulling here, and if you have the handlebar in there, you can push this down and thereby do some type of a vibrato effect. Not really sure. What I can tell from other pictures is this bar that I sadly don't have is like extremely long. You know, it comes up 90-degree bend and goes all the way to here. Must be one of the longest bars in the market ever. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see what we do about that. Oh, and then of course there's obviously the bridge, which is this pretty standard archtop bridge, but with like these cool stripes. It's just plastic inlaid there, but that looks cool. So yeah, this is kind of what we have so far. Let's have a look at the arching of the top. And to me, this still looks relatively healthy. Oftentimes you see a big dip in the top underneath the bridge over like years of down pressure. This doesn't look too bad, actually. What I can tell right away, those pickups aren't really in there well. Like the previous owner actually told me for some reason they took out the pickups and never put them in properly. And as you can tell, I think they switched out the bridge and the neck pickup, right? So the taller frame should go in the back. Looks kind of weird this way. There's some screws missing. Like we only have 2 of 4 on this one. There's also a little crack in there. Might be able to glue that. And in the front, we have no original screw, but like 2 aftermarket ones. Another thing to notice on these old German guitars, everything is flathead. Everything. You won't find a Phillips head on there or any other screw drive, or it will be like aftermarket or replaced part. If you look at the truss rod cover, flathead. If we turn it over and look at the machines, I suspect it will be all flathead, and yes, look at that. Okay, let's check out the weird neck connection here. As I said, it's a bolt-on neck. There's supposed to be like just 2 bolts underneath this cover plate here, and that's it, nothing else. And this is very, very common. They did this for years, as far as I can tell. Like mostly all of them have this design with like just 2 bolts holding on the neck, and it appears to work, right? There's some finish wear on the back while we're at it. That's fine with me. I don't mind that. A pretty beautiful sunburst, actually. Body will most likely be from laminated veneers. This could be maple of some type. Not sure. There's a tiny bit of striping going on here. And the neck, as is the case often with those, is beech, I think. Lots of checking on the back of the neck as well. It's actually laminated here on headstock. You can tell it's like 3 pieces, 2 wide ones and like a narrow centerpiece, which is a good sign. And of course, it's hard to tell on the video, but the neck profile on this thing, when you pick it up, is massive. It's like this giant baseball bat type of neck. Actually feels, hard to describe, yeah? Almost like they just took this rectangular cross-section, rounded off the edges, and it has a little flat spot in the middle. So, yeah, definitely a handful. Okay. First step, I think, is to take it apart, clean it up, and see what we got. For working on these old flathead screws, it's really important to use old tools as well, because oftentimes these slots are like much too narrow for modern screwdrivers, and you end up messing up the slot if you try to force in the new ones. So yeah, cute little vintage screwdriver is what we need. And don't lose it, obviously. Okay, let's reveal the mystery. And that's the neck connection. Again, 2 flathead screws. And again, the right tool for the job really matters. No. Oh, those are metric fasteners, not actual wood screws, but metric thread. So I suppose there should be like a threaded insert in the neck heel. Nice. Okay, and now for the big reveal. Oh, there's something stamped in there. Is this like the Roman 6 or something? For the neck. Oh, look at that. There's the inserts. And they use the shim. And this must be factory. It's one of those cover plates from the back here. This is the one that covered the screws. And they just took one as a shim in the factory. Oh, that's cute. And it says, oh, I think we have a date. Is it 77? Nice. The neck is looking really rather straight. I mean, you would expect it to, since it's just this massive piece of wood. This looks pretty good. I mean, we have to see what it looks like with string tension, obviously. But so far, I mean, I've seen much worse. And the next big reveal. Will there be a truss rod? Or is it just a random cover on there? The screw is kind of bent. It's difficult to get it out. Oh, the head on the screw is bent, whatever. Okay, let's take a look. And there's a truss rod. I want to take off the tuning machines as well to give them like a proper clean and servicing and oiling. And yes, there are terrible old tuners that are just hopeless cases, but most of them can actually work pretty well when they're just cleaned and oiled properly and tightened up. So I will give it a shot here before I even think about replacing them with something new. Even those shafts look pretty straight here, which is kind of unusual because, yeah, this is often the first thing you found like bent over or snapped off on old guitars. Unfortunately, those little blocks here that hold the worm gear are like riveted in there, so we can't take those off. Sometimes you have the open ones that look like a C, so you can take the worm gear out. But this one is completely in there. Yeah, we'll see what we can do about that. The other one as well. No other markings on there. And while we're at it, quick inspection of the fretwork here. As always, the 0 fret has some wear, but it's not too bad. And in the first positions, there's some considerable pitting going on. So there's going to be a fret dress for sure. Nice rosewood, by the way. You wouldn't expect that in like an East German guitar. Well, some of them had pretty nice woods, but it really wasn't consistent. You see all types of stuff there. Lots of crud on the fret ends. Some might be a little bit loose. To make sure they are seated properly. But in general, if we just look at the height we have going on here, I hope we can get away without a refret. Or at least my plan is to try and make this playable as is. before I consider rethreading. And there's certainly enough material for at least one pass of crowning and fretwork. Yeah, overall, I mean, the board doesn't look too bad. I've seen much worse. And now for a closer inspection of the body here. I didn't mention those fun like strap buttons here before, but those are original and typical Musima. Let's check the F-holes. There's like no label in there, but oh, I can see some nice... let's get all the mojo out. Amazing. The other one, there's like a... is it a G? Whatever. When you move it, you can hear something rolling around in there. And I already managed to just spot it in the back, and it appears to be one of the missing screws from the pickups, so we might be lucky and find at least one more. But I think to get a better look, we should remove the pickups. And 2 different screws for good measure. Okay, let's see what we got. There is not even a wire on there. Oh no, it's broken off. Come on. Oh well. But since there's not a bar magnet or anything glued to the bottom, we might at least, or we should at least have Alnico magnets. For whatever that's worth. In general, like, fun construction. While from the outside you think this is like your typical Fender single coil, it clearly isn't. And this one, unfortunately, might have just cracked here because the old owner like insisted on screwing it in the wrong position, forcing it along the curve of the body here and thereby cracking it because it's molded to fit in the front here where the body is like much flatter. I don't know. Let's remove it. And will this one have a wire? No! Alright, now that we have the openings, what can we see here? There's some kind of like a big weird center block in the front here, made of what looks like pine, probably, I don't know. Nothing in the back? That's interesting, so that's definitely not a conventional center block instrument. You can tell the top is laminated. You can really see the layers there. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 layers. I think 5. I have a mirror in there, and there's this flat section of like approximately, what is it, like 1/4 inch, 6 to 8 millimeters. Looks like plywood glued to the top and the back of the instrument, but it's not connected to the bottom, so no center block, just like a massive bridge plate in there. It's really interesting. If you look to the front, we can see the big center block there, but it almost looks like it's not touching the bottom. I need to get some better light in there. Hold on. Yeah, here's the bridge plate again, and it's not plywood, it's just flat sawn pine maybe, as it should be. Then we can get a look at the electronics maybe. That's the big 4-position switch, some pots behind, lots of dirt. Let's try to look at the front block and... oh no, it's touching the top and bottom. There's just this narrower piece that's probably like carved to match the curve. Lots of dirt again, and this is all fallen off pickup wire. There seems to be like no curving or anything between like the top and back and the sides. It's just like straight glued on there. It's curious. Yeah, there's nothing there. And then in the back we have a tail block. Nothing special, just a big hole drilled in there. And I don't see a grounding wire, so maybe we go ahead and add one later. And it looks like they forgot a bit of masking tape in the back. Yeah, overall, quite unusual. No real bracing going on there, but yeah, I mean, a brace that isn't there can't be loose, right? Yeah, what else? This is where they yanked in the wrong screw and unfortunately put a big tear in the top veneer here. I hope I can glue this back down. Then obviously here where the pickguard is missing, it was fastened with these 3 holes that are like nicely marked for us. And actually there was a rubber spacer between there to keep it like floating above the surface. And the rubber must have leaked some type of chemical or solvent or whatever and permanently burn in there. So yeah, just another reason to make a new pickguard to cover those up. Actually do have the mounting hardware. So it were like just cut off sections of rubber tubing or something. Match the profile here. And the appropriate screws for that. So if we end up making the pickguard, we can attach it as it should be, and I have like all 3 of those as well. Knobs just pull off. No grub screw in there, but yeah, don't expect to just replace them with some modern knobs. Look at that fun like D-shaft thing going on there. It's all mounted on a sheet of steel or brass, all on a plate, but how the heck did they get this in there? Oh no. Certainly won't hurt to remove the jack before we attempt this. This is actually like a pretty Western looking jack. If you compare it to like Jolanas from Czechoslovakia, they have like these super weird proprietary jacks. This looks relatively normal. Hold on, I almost got it out. The trick was starting with the smaller pot in relation to this giant switch here, and then also flexing this a little bit. Mission accomplished. There it is. Lots of nice tone dirt in there. It's gonna be fun to figure out what the massive switch does. But at least, or like, we have to clean the pots anyways, I suppose. What's going on with this weird strap hook thing? This is metric thread as well, right? But there is no insert in there, it is just straight in the wood, isn't it? At first glance, this looks just like peeled off lacquer, so I didn't even notice there's a second punch mark here, and obviously it says 77 as well. Yeah, that's pretty sure like a date code. If we look over at the electronics, there's a stamp on the back of the switch, but it's hard to, yeah, it says like February 19 It's impossible to tell. It's like a 1 in the end there. 1971 or something. It's an 81. I don't know, I mean, I can't believe 81. Let's look at the pots here. Not sure if this is the date code up here, but it says 766. This could be like 6th week of 76, maybe. This is like 1 meg. RFT is the manufacturer. And the little 1 in the triangle, usually on old East German stuff, tells you like it's A grade or like first choice, second choice. And on the other one, where's that? Where's the code? Up here it's like 766 as well. Yeah, I still think this is a 77 guitar, and I don't believe it said 81 on the switch here. It's like so hard to read. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. Obviously, this capacitor was in plain sight the entire time, and it just says 780. On the one hand side, I'm not sure if those Styroflex capacitors had date codes on them at all. But then again, I mean, 780, that's not a capacitance value you'd find on one of those. Is it a capacitor from 7th week of 1980? I mean, this could be like a replaced electronics thing. But who knows? I mean, back then, maybe this guitar was sitting on a shelf since 77 because they missed some parts and ended up finishing it just when the electronics came in. I mean, it's Eastern Germany, everything was possible back then. Honestly, no idea. And I screwed up. Terrible pun, sorry. The last thing to remove was this little tailpiece holder tram thing. And I was just removing the screws and it went great until one of them snapped off half of its head, like this one here. And you never know with these old flimsy kind of screws. I mean, if you look at the one I already pulled out, it's like super thin and tiny and rusty. And part of the head just snapped, so yeah, we're gonna have some fun extracting this. And now we can worry about removing this piece of screw still in there. First step would be to protect the finish a little bit. So let's just tape it up carefully here. On old finishes like that, you want to be careful with the tape and not use something that's super tacky, because there's like the risk of pulling up old finish. I will start by giving it some light taps. This can help to loosen up the threads a little bit in the wood. Usually there's some rust in there, maybe even some glue, who knows. So it's like the principle of the impact gun, right? I want to test my luck with those gripping pliers here. This is like the strongest holding thing you can possibly have. I want to try very carefully if I can grab it. The iron is just so soft, just compressing the head even more. Should probably apply some heat, because if this breaks up, this is like my only chance to get any hold of it. Better be safe than sorry, right? So let's apply some heat. We can even apply a little drop of fresh solder on there for better heat transfer. Otherwise, this is just the tiniest point contact. It's gonna be tough to get any heat in there, so let's do this. The heat actually did the trick. You can now carefully turn it and pull it all the way out. You probably heard craft people talk about how for some operations you actually do it by ear or by feel. And regarding the question how long and how much heat you want to apply, this is something I actually do by smell. So yeah, you're heating it up until you get like the first lightest smell of not really burning wood, but yeah, but actually yes, kind of the wood burning smell when you touch on hot iron to wood, or sometimes you get this distinctive smell when you heat wood glue or lacquer, and just when you get the first hint of this kind of smell, you know you've heated it enough. And that's when you want to stop, otherwise you're just gonna burn it in there. There you have it. And this concludes chapter 1 of every guitar restoration, the disassembly. Next, we'll have to look at each of the individual parts, make sure they work, repair if necessary, clean them up, and prepare for the third chapter, reassembly.